پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. Allahumma salli ala. Brothers and sisters, if you'd like to get seated, inshallah, we will start the program with recitation of Holy Quran. With Allah salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Allahumma salli. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ويقول الذين آمنوا أهؤلاء الذين أقسموا بالله جهد أيمانهم إنهم لمعكم حبطت أعمالهم فأصبحوا خاسرين. يا أيها الذين آمنوا من يرتد منكم عن دينه فسوف يأتي الله بقوم يحبهم ويحبونه أذلة على المؤمنين عزة على الكافرين يجاهدون في سبيل الله ولا يخافون لومة لائم. ذلك فضل الله يؤتيه من يشاء والله واسع عليم. إنما وليكم الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا الذين يقيمون الصلاة ويؤتون الزكاة وهم راكعون. ومن يتول الله ورسوله والذين آمنوا فإن حزب الله هم الغالبون. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا تتخذوا الذين اتخذوا دينكم هزوا ولعبا من الذين أوتوا الكتاب من قبلكم والكفار أولياء واتقوا الله إن كنتم مؤمنين. وإذا ناديتم إلى الصلاة اتخذوها هزوا ولعبا ذلك بأنهم قوم لا يعقلون. قل يا أهل الكتاب هل تنقمون منا إلا أن آمنا بالله وما أنزل إلينا وما أنزل من قبل وأن أكثرهم فاسقون. قل هل أنبئكم بشر من ذلك مثوبة عند الله من لعنه الله وغضب عليه وجعل منهم القردة والخنازير وأعبد الطاغوت أولئك شر مكانا وأضل عن سواء السبيل. پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. At this time, I'd like to invite Brother Taha Ali for recitation of Mankabat with the loud salat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad.
بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات. السلام علیکم ورحمۃ اللہ. آپ سب کو عید غدیر مبارک. کام مشکل ہے بامداد خدا کر دوں گا. آج میں عشق کا طوفان بپا کر دوں گا. کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا. راز اللہ کی توحید ہے ہم راز علی. کبریائی کی دلیلوں کا ہے آغاز علی. دل بے دل سے جو نکلی ہے وہ آواز علی. آسمان ساز زمیں ساز بشر ساز علی کار تخلیق بتائی دے عہد کرتا ہے ارے یہ وہ بندہ ہے جو خالق کی مدد کرتا ہے یا علی کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا منبر عالم امکان کا خطیب اعظم بولتا تھا تو ٹھہر جاتے تھے لمحوں کے قدم میرا اس بات پہ ایمان ہے قرآن کی قسم لڑکھڑاتا نہ جو کم ظرف نصیری اس دم اپنے حبداروں کو نبیوں سے بڑھا دیتے علی اور ایک ایک شخص کو سلمان بنا دیتے علی کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا وہی جبریل ہی لاتے تھے یہ ایمان ہے میرا اس روش پر بھی ذرا سوچئے اہل ولا آگے سدرا سے فرشتہ یہ نہیں جا سکتا پھر یہ قرآن بھلا کس کی بدولت پہنچا نطق اللہ کا مولا میرے بن جاتے تھے ارے جو علی کہتے تھے جبریل وہی لاتے تھے کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا یا علی اے عزاداروں ہمیں پھر سے سنبھلنا ہوگا اپنے کردار سے ماحول بدلنا ہوگا توڑ کر وقت کی زنجیر نکلنا ہوگا راہ سلمان پہ ایمان سے چلنا ہوگا ہم محبوں پہ جو ظلم کا دروازہ ہے یہ علی کو نہ سمجھنے کا ہی خمیازہ ہے کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا بس آخری شعر مدح حیدر میں تکلم یہ تقیہ کیسا مصلحت کیسی انا کیسی بہانہ کیسا اور وقت کے ساتھ عقیدے کو بدلنا کیسا موت آنی ہے تو پھر موت سے خطرہ کیسا بند یہ عشق کا دروازہ نہیں کر سکتا اور میں علی پر کوئی سمجھاتا نہیں کر سکتا کرنے دو مجھے ساقی کوثر کی ثنا بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات
Jazakallah, Brother Taha Ali. One more loud salawat for him. At this time, I'd like to request Brother Faizan for recitation of Manqaba with the loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
ایک درود بھیجیے محمد وال محمد. بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، جز تیرے کوئی اپنا سہارا نہیں. تیرا در چھوڑ کر جائیں آخر کہاں، تیرا در چھوڑ کر جائیں آخر کہاں، غیر کا در جبیں کو گوارا نہیں. بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، جز تیرے کوئی اپنا سہارا نہیں. جو علی کا نہیں وہ نبی کا نہیں، جو نبی کا نہیں وہ خدا کا نہیں. اے مسلمان اصحاب سے پوچھ لے، کیا یہ خم نبی نے پکارا نہیں. آئے کعبے میں جس دم علی کے قدم، منہ کے بل گر پڑے بت یہ کہتے ہوئے، آئیے آئیے جانشین نبی، آئیے آئیے جانشین نبی، یہ تمہارا ہی گھر ہے ہمارا نہیں. وہ تو کم ضعف ہے جو تجھے چھوڑ دے، ورنہ مولا علی تیری تعظیم کو جو پلٹ کر نہ آئے وہ سورج نہیں، جو پلٹ کر نہ آئے وہ سورج نہیں، جو نہ چوکھٹ کو چومے وہ تارا نہیں. بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، جز تیرے کوئی اپنا سہارا نہیں. پہلے تاریخ خیبر کی پڑھ لیجئے، پھر کوئی آخری فیصلہ دیجئے. یا یہ کہنا پیغمبر بھی ہیں بدعتی، یا یہ کہنا پیغمبر بھی ہیں بدعتی، یا یہ کہنا علی کو پکارا نہیں. بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، جز تیرے کوئی اپنا سہارا نہیں. کل ایمان تو کل اسلام تو، دین کی رگ رگ میں ہے صرف تیرا لہو. جنگ خیبر ہو خندق کے بدر و احد، جنگ خیبر ہو خندق کے بدر و احد، کون سی جنگ میں کفر ہارا نہیں. بے کسوں کے مددگار مولا علی، जुज तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। जाने खंदक में कैसे मुसलमान थे, तानाए कुफर चुपचाप सुनते रहे। सबके पहलू में तलवार मौजूद थी, सबके पहलू में तलवार मौजूद थी। अम्र का सर किसी ने उतारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुस तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। और ये मख्ता के या तो रोजे पे बुलवा लो शाहे नजफ, या हो बाली पे मुझको यहाँ दी देनी। आ रही है हर एक सांस से ये सदा, आ रही है हर एक सांस से ये सदा। अब जुदाई रजा को गवारा नहीं। बेकसों के मददगार मौला अली, जुज तेरे कोई अपना सहारा नहीं। बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सलवात।
Jazakallah, brother Faizan. One more loud salawat for him, please. Respected Shaykh, elders, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum. Congratulations to all mu'mineen and mu'minat on Eid al-Ghadeer and the birth of Imam Hadi alayhi salam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala. Tonight we are honored to host Shaykh Mahdi here at CFK. Jazakallah Shaykh for accepting our invitation once again. We are grateful for your presence and excited to listen to your speech. Before I request the Shaykh to ascend the member, just a few announcements. Tonight, following the program, at 9:15, there will be a workshop for brothers and sisters, an active shooters workshop. This session is designed to equip community members with the knowledge and skills needed to respond effectively in the event of an active shooter situation. Led by experienced professionals in the field, this workshop will cover topics such as recognizing warning signs, developing an emergency action plan, and implementing effective strategies for survival. Don't miss out on this invaluable opportunity to enhance your community's safety and preparedness. Join to take a proactive step towards protecting yourself and those around you. Inshallah, after Ghadeer, we begin to look towards the upcoming month of Muharram. The City of Knowledge will be holding the first 10 days of Ashra Majlis in English. We are honored to have Sheikh Amin Rastani for this year's Ashra. The programs are scheduled to begin at 6:45 p.m. with Ziyarat Ashura and ending with Salat and Niyaz to go. We will also be hosting 2 private majalises during the Ashra. The first will be an Urdu Majlis hosted by Brother Sultan Rizvi, starting at 7:30 in the morning with the recitation of speech by Maulana Mudassir Musfi Shah. The second will be a Farsi Majlis with Sheikh Amin Rastani, beginning immediately after Salatul Maghriban. The events for both of these will be communicated shortly through our WhatsApp groups. A reminder for sponsorship. Here at CFK, we aim to serve the community while being responsible with your donations, as it is your contribution that enables us to bring to you great speakers and keeping our doors open. We also do not do any fundraising between programs. Sponsorship slots are available online. We request that you contribute, as you can also become a part of the Azadari for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Sponsorship slots are available online and updated every week at cfkdfw.org. Our objective of CFK is to serve all of our guests adequately while being morally responsible by minimizing wastage. We thank you for doing your part in helping us to achieve this objective by pre-registering using the links present on our WhatsApp and email announcements. We would like to remind parents of the toddlers in our community about our dedicated Mother's Room. This room has a live feed of the program. It has been set up so that toddlers can be accompanied by their mothers and the young ones can get accustomed to listening and sitting during the program in a lighter, less restrictive setting. With this, we hope to bring ease to all of us during these upcoming nights and help keep noise to a minimum during the programs. At this time, I'd like to invite Sheikh Mahdi to ascend the member for his speech tonight and request all the brothers and sisters to move as close to the member as possible with allow salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Jazakumullah. Thank you so much. Ahsan. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة على رسول الله وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين وأصحابه المنتجبين سيما بقية الله في الأرضين عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين إلى قيام يوم الدين. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا. اللهم صل على محمد. Alhamdulillah, we're gathered tonight again in celebration of these auspicious occasions. Last night we dedicated our time in trying to better appreciate this Yawmul Ghadeer, this Eid of Eids, the most auspicious of the auspicious days. And of course, we are in a time period of also celebrating and commemorating the birth anniversary of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam that passed. And of course, just in a few days, we'll welcome the Eid of Mubahila, or the day of Mubahila. So, alhamdulillah, a lot going on, a lot of very important events, reminders for us, and also invitations to us to help us better build relationships with our Imams and the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, especially our Imam of our time. May Allah inshallah hasten his reappearance. Let's give a quick recap. Tonight inshallah I'd like to build on kind of what we discussed last night, and for those of you who may not have been present, just to kind of summarize briefly what we mentioned last night and then try to build on it, give some more examples, and also introduce the voice and the character of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salatu wassalam. So we said that the day of Ghadeer is a day that of course is well established as a kind of a pivotal moment, not just in the history of Islam, but in our relationships with the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and also the Ahlul Bayt. And we said of the many etiquettes that exist, of the many a'mal and rituals to be performed, one of them is a greeting that we exchange with one another, and we made an attempt last night to try and share this exchange with each other. If you remember, of the many kind of like exchanges that we may give, or many praises that we may give to Allah, the most common one or the most prominent one is that we say to each other on that day, Alhamdulillah alladhi ja'alana min al-mutamassikin biwalayati aliyin amir al-mu'minin. So last night we spoke a bit about what it means for us to do tamassuk. If you remember, tamassuk means for us to do two things. When someone cares and values for something, one is that they first kind of like protect it to make sure that it does not escape them. When they bring it near to them, or when it is brought near to them, they want to make sure it doesn't leave. The second thing that a person needs to do is, after they kind of like protect it, they preserve to make sure that it remains vibrant, it does not decay. And the tamassuk that we do is, as we say in this greeting that we exchange with one another, is to the wilaya of Imam Ali, and not necessarily just to the mahabba of Imam Ali alayhi salam and the mahabba of the Ahlul Bayt. So we use this as a platform to then, start having these reflections and this constant review and auditing of our behaviors, of our interactions with each other, of our mindsets that we have when it comes to best exemplifying this tamassuk. We are, of course, those we believe that we are truly kind of at the forefront of the expression of mahabbat Ahlul Bayt. We also want to make sure that this tamassuk to the wilaya also even exceeds that. We said that a person can, express that true love best when they engage in a relationship of wilaya. If in the relationships that you may have, many of them are undergirded by a love that you feel like is, kind of unquestionable. It is absolute, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is a relationship that is productive and constructive. The wilaya is that type of a relationship. It's one that is constructive. It's a love that undergirds that, an intense love that allows for actionable items to come out of that. Okay, so we said the core value that Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam, not only himself possesses, but also uses as a kind of like a common or a shared language for all those who want to be in relationship with him, is that of justice. We were trying to better understand what it means for us to also kind of hold firm, to grip firmly to this basic virtue of justice in our lives, and also how that's supposed to drive our ability to better or best engage in relationship of wilaya with the Imam of our time. Justice is kind of like that common thread that follows throughout. And so we gave a number of different examples. We said what the Imam did throughout his life, but especially as he was tasked with assuming leadership in the Muslim community, and kind of like in that, I don't want to say superficial, but at least in that commonly accepted or public-facing role of the Khilafah. He made very clear from the first day that people came that what his kind of plan for office was. And because he was so committed to following through, and he didn't have to campaign, so to speak, it's not like he had to give promises, and then afterwards, after the people elected him, there would be all these things that happen. Before you know it, he wasn't able to do any of them, and then when re-election season comes, all of a sudden it's a big deal now, right? I say this to those of you, unfortunately, or fortunately, but more unfortunately, that are, kind of buckling up for the restarting of, student loans. All of us, I think, were under the assumption that, this great man was going to forgive, but it looks like, right now is not the right time. Maybe after his re-election, or whoever is going to get re-elected, they'll give us that promise, to the American people, and hopefully they'll be rewarded. Anyway, so the Imam didn't have to campaign, and because of that, he didn't have to give empty promises. So one of the things that he told them is that all of this wealth that was distributed unjustly, it is going to be my policy to return it. And I shared this, I want to repeat this excerpt that I shared last night of the Imam's statement there. He says, فَإِنَّ الْعَدْلَ سَاعَةٌ. If we learn to establish kind of our operating principle within society as one that is just, that will allow for the expansion of sustenance and for the widespread nature of sustenance to hold true. It means of all of the talk that we have of everyone should live comfortably, there should be a standard of living for everyone, there should be a basic universal income, there should be basic, all of these things that we're saying, the Imam says those things are only guaranteed when justice undergirds the policy. And of course, we know justice cannot just be a talk, it has to be a follow-through. So this is a lesson for all humanity of all times, and especially one of our time today. Those of us who are maybe a little bit more optimists when we look at the world, alhamdulillah, that's good. We need to balance between the optimism and the pessimism. But whatever it is, we need to know. No system will succeed unless true justice is at the core of that. It says, فَإِنَّ فِي الْعَدْلِ سَعَةٌ وَمَنْ ضَاقَ عَلَيْهِ الْعَدْلُ فَالْجَوْرُ عَلَيْهِ أَضْيَقُ. A person who finds it difficult for them to organize a structure, an institution, a family, whatever it is, on the basis of justice, that makes things difficult for them, or it restricts them in certain advancements that they can make, then let them know that treading a path that is kind of like paired with injustice, that person will suffer even more. And we kind of give the examples of kind of the rise to success may be very fast, and it may have great velocity, but ultimately if the justice is not there, in a moment's time, it can all come crashing down. I want to share a statement from Imam Hadi alayhi that he speaks to this point as well. So now, again, for us, we say, well, I'm not in a position of power, I'm not a public servant, I'm not a politician, I'm not an executive, I'm not a community leader, whatever you want to call it, so these things don't apply to me. No, it applies. It applies to all of us, because all of us are maintaining some set of affairs. At the very, very, very least, most of us are at least responsible for ourselves, right? There may be a few in society that, because of their circumstances, require others to take care of them, but generally, 99% of us are taking care of ourselves. Or taking care of ourselves, meaning that we're more or less responsible and will be accountable for our own affairs. So the justice also has to undergird that. And now you extend that beyond relationships that we have with people, your families, maybe your coworkers. But remember, at the core of all of that is what? Relationship of walaya with your imam. Even in that relationship, the justice needs to inform that. Okay, so Imam al-Hadi ﷺ says that, listen, anyone who is in search of accumulation, of growth, they need to make sure that they hold true to this basic principle of justice too. He says, narrated from him, إِنَّ الْحَرَامَ لَا يَنْمِي. A person who acquires through means that are questionable, means that are, kind of undoubtedly problematic, through means of haram. Again, haram has a more expansive definition that some of us may be comfortable with. But let's say, so the person who gains through haram, that haram possession, those haram possessions, those earnings, those assets, those commodities, those will never appreciate. It'll never grow. Someone says, oh, well, I don't know about that. There are plenty of crooks in the world and it looks like their assets are appreciating. So what is the Imam? Maybe he's talking about otherworldly. No. Then the Imam continues. He says, وَإِنَّمَا لَا يُبَارِكُ لَهُ فِيهِ. If it happens to appreciate, then that wealth will not have barakah. It won't be blessed. It won't be prosperous. Right? A lot of life is to try and balance between what we call kind of like the earning and the using. Right? The accumulating and the spending. A lot of times we're stuck in this catch-22, especially the way that society is set up. You gotta work so hard to earn, and you earn a good amount, but then there's no time left, or there's no kind of bandwidth left sometimes. I don't know, there's bandwidth to enjoy it. The more successful you'll probably know, unless, alhamdulillah, you found the secret formula to be both successful but also have time to enjoy the successes of your lives. But generally it's like this. People work so hard, they apply themselves. There's generally very little time for them to truly enjoy what they have. Anyways, this is not to say that our earnings are haram, but in the event that there is something problematic, suspicious, or we know we should do better, whatever it is. Imam says, even if it appreciates, that wealth will not have barakah. Then the Imam continues, he says, وَمَا أَنْفَقَهُ لَمْ يُؤْجَرْ عَلَيْهِ. Person says, well, maybe I wronged, maybe I didn't earn it in the best way possible, maybe I had to step on step on top of a few people to get what I have, maybe I had to wrong a few people, maybe I didn't do right by a few people, whatever it is, I'm here now. So for me to make amends, I'm going to spend some of my wealth charitably. If you've noticed in a lot of kind of like corporate philanthropy, right? Corporate philanthropy. It's the basic contradiction that we can earn in ways that are dehumanizing, that are disrespectful to the basic humanity of our workers, that don't respect their due share, but we'll turn around and make it right by participating in charitable activities, philanthropic activities. It makes it right. What really is painful to see is kind of like I don't want to call it substantial, but a portion of society thinking that, that's a net positive. Well, yeah, this person, everyone has their journey to success, but now look at them. That's exactly what Imam Ali says, be careful of these people. If Imam Ali came right now, all these successful gurus, whatever, all of them would be stripped bare bones. There'd be nothing left for them. And notice, when you take the wealth away from these people, are they really geniuses? Are they really so successful? Are they really so smart? A lot of them look like fools, buffoons, the mistakes that they make, the decisions that they make. It's really just the wealth that props up this facade of intelligence. So the Imam says, even a person who then takes that and uses it for charitable practices, that person will receive no benefit from that action. Oh, then what should they do? They're trying to make the best out of a bad situation. Remember, the principle that Imam Ali alayhi salatu wasalam teaches us in the practice of justice is not to try to right or wrong through doing a separate, kind of disjointed, good action, so to speak. No. You have to fix the thing that you messed up to begin with. Only then. And finally, the Imam says, وَمَا خَلَّفَهُ كَانَ زَادَهُ إِلَى النَّارِ. And if a person, just continues to let that wealth sit, that equity sit, it'll only serve as fuel for their punishment in the fire. So again, for us, I think it's a riwayah like this is probably a little bit more. We should pay a little bit more attention to not because we're people like intentional on finding the most haram way to make a living. No, not at all. It just means where are we? We're in the land of opportunity, as they say. But a lot of these opportunities come at these costs too. And then like someone like myself, I may try to justify that by saying, well, I'm going to do something good with it. I'm scared when I read things like this. Because maybe, with the best of intentions, if something is gained without the due, kind of like, without its due, then even me trying to make it right later may not be. So all of this is just to say hypersensitivity towards this issue of justice. And especially when and how the Imam speaks of using things in the correct manner, even if it does not fully align with the way that we see things. This is the message of our time. This is the message all the Imams are saying. And this is what the tamassuk to wilayat is telling us. Umayna alayhi salatu wasalam, when he's gathering with some of these, like I mentioned last night, one of the groups that he struggled with is these elite people, these kind of, some of them very accomplished companions. We call them mu'mineen. Again, I don't mean elder in age, but the elder of the communities. And it's those who are established in the deen. Those who are, so to speak, established in the iman. They figured out the path already and they've been on that path. Imam had a hard time with some of these people. Some of them came to pressure the Imam, we mentioned last night. In one of the sermons in Nahj al-Balagha, sermon 136, when these high-ranking individuals came to the Imam responded to them like that. He says, لَمْ تَكُنْ بَيْعَتُكُمْ إِيَّايَ فَلْتَ. When the people came to me, when you all came to me to give allegiance, your allegiance was not an allegiance like you had given before. Falta is a decision you make without fully thinking of the consequences. Imam is drawing their attention to previous models of selection of leadership. Again, as students of history, you look to that, you have these admissions of, well, that in hindsight, that wasn't the best thing to do, but Allah protected us from the consequences of it, very casually. The Imam says, when you've come to me, you all didn't come saying without thinking. It wasn't a kind of a reaction without thought. You had experienced before, and you saw none of them were, good models, sustainable models. وَلَيْسَ أَمْرِي وَأَمْرُكُمْ وَاحِدًا. He says, my position and your position, they're not the same. إِنِّي أُرِيدُكُمْ لِلَّهِ وَأَنْتُمْ تُرِيدُونَنِي لِأَنفُسِكُمْ. Says that I seek you all meaning like I seek acceptance of a position and a responsibility like this for the sake of God. But you all seek me for your own desires, for your own purposes. So someone says, well, the people finally understood the truth, so they went to the Imam. No, that's not necessarily true. Rushing to the home of the Imam and none of that necessarily is a testament of true valuing. So you all have come to me because of certain desires that you all have. It serves some bottom line for you. Serves some bottom line. أيها الناس أعينوني على أنفسكم. He says, O people, support me. Get behind me. Follow the instructions that I give, even if it goes against your heart's desire. So again, you have to fight with yourself to ensure that the policy I'm going to put in place, the rule that I'm going to put in place, the way of life I'm going to put in place is in your best interest, even though it may be to your disliking. Follow me in that. Support me in that. إيموا الله لأنصفن المظلوم ولأقودن الظالم بجزامتي حتى أورده منهل الحق وكان كارها. He says that, support me by Allah, I will take revenge from the oppressed one, from the oppressor. I will put a string in the nose of the oppressor and I will drag him to the string of truthfulness, even though he may grudge it. Imam says, this is what I'm going to do to correct things. If you're happy with that type, then Bismillah. So he said when the Imam, kind of set these terms and the people accepted, at least, on the outside, superficially to these terms, then the Imam followed through with doing that. We spoke about how his interactions were with different people. His, again, hypersensitivity to the Baytul Mal. Hypersensitivity to the treasury. We mentioned last night, Imam says, O Kufins, if after I leave you to the hereafter, I leave anything but my home and my vehicle, then know I was a traitor. Why is he saying that? It's not just about who he is, but it's also to teach him about what has come before and what will come after. That's the sign of someone who is truly, truly, truly dedicated to the cause of serving Allah. Now, it doesn't mean a person cannot become wealthy or prosperous following in this kind of like core principle of justice. It just means in that position, it's not going to happen. Through that medium, it's not going to happen. It's a position of service. It's a position of guidance and leadership. So sensitive the Imam was. We gave examples last night, more examples. These are countless examples. Imam says that a group of individuals from Kermanshah had brought religious collections. The system that generally was established during the time of the Imams, even after the Imams had to go, so to speak, kind of in underground networks, people would collect their religious dues from different geographies and then they would deliver it to the Imam. Through very, kind of like, there were different convoys, many of them had to happen secretly. A group of people from Kermanshah brought religious dues to the Imam. The Imam then collected the amount. And during this time of rule in Kufa, there were 7 different tribes. They broke up the different classes of people into 7 different tribes. The Imam stood there, collected all the assets, and he divided them equally to 7 parts, giving each of the heads of the tribe 1/7 of these religious dues. Okay, that's not a big deal, but the Imam was very particular about doing that. He says, at the end of that division, there remained a single, we say like loaf of bread. They didn't always bring money and coins. Sometimes they would bring other things. And it just so happens, I don't know how or why, a loaf of bread survived all the way from Kermanshah, but whatever it was, this was also a portion of those dues that were delivered. The Imam divided the bread in 7 parts and distributed it. Now, if it was me, I would say, whoa, I'm so tired from all these calculations, and it's not like the Imam, had Excel to work with or other tools. It's let's get some jam or some cheese or whatever, let's have this bread all together. Thank you, everyone. No, he said, this is not mine. Doesn't belong to me. Doesn't belong to me. And it's reported that Imam, after distribution of Baytul Mal, either every time or it was generally kind of like seeing this type of behavior, it said Imam, after he would finish that activity, he would, if he didn't have wudu, make wudu, and he would prepare himself to perform 2 rak'ah of prayer. He would perform 2 rak'ah of prayer, then afterwards he would turn to the guys and he would make this dua. He would say, Oh Allah, let this prayer serve as a witness on the day of judgment that I distributed the entirety of the Baytul Mal to its rightful owners and I didn't keep anything for myself. That's how regimented this individual is when he does things. When he starts, he makes sure it's correctly accounted. He's organized. He doesn't just throw it in a pile and I'll figure it out later. Then he makes sure the distribution happens accurately and equitably. Nothing is too small to fall within the bounds of the treasury. And then finally, he wraps things up with a prayer and a dua to remind himself and to teach all those people around him what it's all about. Now imagine if someone had a system like this. How much does a person then have to mess up to then think, well, I'm worthy or it is my right to take. That's what the Imam is teaching us of doing tamassuk to wilayat. That's why Imam Khomeini says you can't just come and exchange this greeting with one another and think, everything's okay now. We've done our duty. He says it is not just enough for us to come, and he says this, to recite the poetries and to put the lights up. He says those are good things, they're important things. We're supposed to celebrate this like no other celebration. But tamassuk to wilayat is that, but it is more so what? It is this program. And it is a reflection on this and finding how far we are from that kind of behavior, then that helps us kind of gauge potentially how far are we to serving the cause of the Imam of our time. If Imam comes and gives us, okay, this is, come here, you have to distribute this, you have to calculate this. Oh, I put it in an account with other money, I'll figure it out later. If that organization is not there, if that system has not already been established, if that hypersensitivity is not there, if a person is not trained and regimented, a person is not ready then. A person has not done tamassuk to wilayat. Person may be an outsider looking and say, whoa, this is fantastic, but it's less likely that the Imam is going to give a role to that individual. And that's what the Imam, not just what the Imam was looking for, that's what the significance of a day of Ghadeer is. That's what all the rest of the Imams are trying to teach us, is tamassuk to wilayat. So the Imam had this hypersensitivity towards distribution in a just way. Now, it doesn't mean that the Imam was so rigid, so by the book, that if someone truly was in a time of, it's not like the Imam was going to ignore them. Imagine if I came to the Imam, you know the story of his brother Aqil. Comes and asks for we call it a personal loan. Right? And you know the story, he asks him, I have this loan, I have this debt. Imam says, I'm sorry, I don't have anything. You have the whole treasury at your disposal. I'm not asking a gift, I'm asking for a loan. Isn't a loan a good thing? And you know the story, he tells him to come to the masjid for prayer. Masjid gets full of people. Then he turns to Aqil and says, you want me to essentially usurp the right of all of these individuals? Aqil said, no, obviously not, backed off. But the Imam is not that rigid, not that much of we want to say kind of like a rule follower. He's a rule follower, but he's not like totally negligent to the needs of the people too. An elderly man came to the Imam one day when he was distributing Baytul Mal, and he said, listen, I'm an old man. I'm an old, feeble man. I don't know if he was just trying to make a case for himself or truly he was. But he came and said, please, I need a little bit more. Imam, he, kind of like, he's more caring for people than they are even for themselves. Imam says, listen, I apologize. This is not my money. This is not money that I earned, nor is it money that I received from inheritance. It doesn't belong to me. I can't give you a larger share. But as you all know, the event didn't end there. The Imam then turned around to the people and said, oh people, this old man has made a request. Who amongst you is ready to receive the blessing of God in helping this elderly man? Simple as that. So what does Imam do? Imam doesn't use the treasury. Imam uses what? His social capital. Imam uses his social capital to help out another person. You may say it all comes from the same thing. The treasury comes from the earnings of the people in some way, and the Imam is then asking the people to give to them. Yes, but doesn't blur the lines. He keeps those things distinct because they need to be kept distinct. And obviously the people turn around and help this elderly man. So to live a justful life does not mean for a person to be totally negligent of the needs of other people. That's not true. But a person can gain a social capital in a way that all it takes is one small request. If someone like me, I can turn around and say, oh, help this person, help that person, help this person. Someone listening to that, well, you help them yourself. Why are you telling me? Someone who has strong social capital, that person asks for something, 10 people, 100 people are going to jump immediately on it. So even those small interactions the Imams had and used those social capitals to change people's lives. Now this is a small thing, but there's even more impactful ones. This is narrated in one of the books of Marhum Shaykh Abbas Qumi that many know kind of like as the author of Mafatihul Jinan. He has another book kind of outlining, lives of the Ahlul Bayt. And there it's Al-Anwar al-Bahiyya fi Tawarikh al-Hujaj al-Ilahiyya. There he has a story about a Shia man in Isfahan. Now, right now, if you look predominantly, that area, that region is, majority Shia, overwhelming majority Shia. But it wasn't during the time of Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam. It was actually, when they were in the, very much in the minority. So people were always questioning, like, why is this person a Shia? Why does he have these beliefs living in Isfahan? Imagine some far off town, probably people thinking in Texas, why are Muslims in Texas? And on top of that, why are Shias in Texas? I don't know, something to that effect. So people ask him, why do you believe these things? Why are you a Shia? He says, I had an interaction with Imam al-Hadi that was the cause of my conversion. Social capital, simple actions. He says, I was a poor man, but I had the skill of, one, being kind of brave and courageous. I said what needed to be said, and I was a good public speaker. So a delegation was going to visit the caliph of the time, Mutawakkil, and they took me with them because, I have this skill of being able to articulate what our needs were and perhaps make a convincing case of why we need more support from the treasury, from the Baytul Mal. So we went there. When we arrived at the castle of Mutawakkil, there was chatter that Mutawakkil had asked this Imam al-Hadi alayhi salam to be summoned. I don't know who this person was, so I asked, who is this person that's being summoned? He said, this is, a descendant of Ali alayhi salam, and his believers, in their kind of the language they used during that time, the charged languages, the Rafidis, they understand this person to be their Imam, and he's being summoned here. It's possible, this Mutawakkil obviously has an issue with him. It's possible that, he's maybe even going to kill him. A lot of times these caliphs, they were unclear and unsure of exactly how they should exert their force. Many of them, they, kind of flirted with this idea of making these public displays of power. And a lot of times these threats were always on the table, and the people knew about it too. Anyway, he said, I heard that. I decided to just stick around to see what was going to happen here. Says, when the Imam showed up, I saw him kind of nearing with his horse, and the people knew him clearly. They began to congregate around him, on his right, on his left. Imam was not really paying them much attention. He continued on his path, on his way to the castle, and I went in the front to kind of see what was going on. Imagine kind of like they put up these ropes and people go in the front to see that important individual, the celebrity, whatever. So I went in the front to see what was going on. And once I got there, I was able to see this individual, the Imam. He says that I saw him, his beauty was so charged. His love fell in my heart somehow. I was just totally taken aback by this person. There was something different about him. So he said, in my heart, I began to make this request of God, if this person is really here to be killed, protect him. How sad would it be for a person, perhaps this beautiful, not beautiful like a physical beauty, but a person with such great positive energy, if you want to call it. So I was repeating this in my heart as the Imam was getting closer and closer. All of a sudden, when he got to where I was standing looking at him, he turned to me, he focused on me, and he said, the dua that you made has been accepted. And know that Allah will give you a long life, Allah will give you increased wealth, Allah will give you increased progeny. He turned his head back to kind of like not paying attention to the people and continued and went inside. And the story continues. He said that one interaction that I had with him was so powerful, I came back to Isfahan. I continued to live my life. He says, I'm older than 75 years old now. And that time, this time, it was kind of I've lived this much. He said, I have 10 children, so the progeny increased. And he said, I have so much wealth. And this is the kind of the description. He says, I have so much wealth, just the wealth that I have inside my home. Not counting my assets outside of the home. Just the wealth that I have inside my home is equal to 1,000 dirhams, so 1 million dirham. This person was probably, a multi-millionaire in his time. Poor man. One dua of the Imam. So, again, the point here is that, yes, they are just individuals. Is it just for this person to have 10 children and $1 million? If the Imam makes a dua and it is God's will, so long as it doesn't destroy what? So long as it doesn't disrupt what? What? A social right. The principle of justice is not disturbed. Imam can make dua, all of us become millionaire. But if the way of doing that is to take something that doesn't belong to us and justify for some greater good, that's where this will definitely not pay dividends. So the Imams were individuals who were so committed to living justly, but at the same time, they ensured that though they were not able to accommodate individuals that may have had requests then, they went out of their way to use their social capital especially, and sometimes in the form of dua of Allah, to make sure that those persons' needs were met. Recite salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So that's what we're aspiring to do, to try to become as Shias mutamassikin, to become those individuals who are learning to do those things in our lives. One great example of those who did tamassuk is the great companion of not just the Prophet, but the great defender of wilayah, Abu Dhar al-Ghifari. You know, Abu Dhar, again, was someone who not only had intense love, but also he was someone to say what needed to be said and stand up for that which was right. Abu Dhar was one of the people who was a very vocal dissident of the third Khalifa, because he could see the favoritism, the nepotism that was running rampant in society. It was his duty, it was his training that he had received from Ahlul Bayt. So what was the consequence of that? He was exiled. Right? He was kicked out of town. Not only was he exiled, but he was exiled to a dry, barren land by the name of Rabadeh. I don't want to say it's like Dallas, but some areas that's even drier, more barren, hotter. He's exiled there. And when Abu Dhar is being kicked out of town, and remember, a lot of these things were done publicly, so people would see and they would kind of fear and they would learn, they would be admonished for them not to repeat. Imam Ali alayhi salam comes to see him off. And in saying that, he turns to Abu Dhar, "Oh Abu Dhar, you express anger for the cause of God, so put your hope in God. The people felt threatened by you because of their worldly possessions, while you feared the safety of your faith from them." Abu Dhar was in a position where he had to choose. Either he's going to compromise what he knows to be right, to speak out against injustices, he's going to compromise his faith to accommodate his peers, so to speak, or he was going to say something even if it came with the consequences of him being exiled, came with the consequences of him kind of receiving the discomforts that come after. But Abu Dhar is the one that gets this stamp of approval from Ahlul Bayt. He is the one that is seen off, and the Imam comes and tells him, "You have done tamassuk here." He's an example of holding firm to the rope of Ahlul Bayt and doing tamassuk to Allah. Now you say, "Okay, brother, all these things are really nice. We have to, let's start small. Let's start at a lower level." I'm talking for someone like myself, what are the starting point that we can do? Imam Ali Nahjul Balagha, in his 45th letter that he's sending to the governor of Basra, established at the time, he's telling him that, yes, the Imam is in a position and the follower is in the position. The Imam is capable of something, the follower must also be capable of something. He says, "Ala wa inna likulli ma'mumin imama." For every follower there must be an Imam. يَقْتَدِي bihi, that he follows him. وَيَسْتَذِيءُ بِنُورِ عِلْمِهِ, and that he is able to tread the path out of the light that his leader sheds on the path that he's supposed to tread. أَلَا وَإِنَّ إِمَامَكُمْ قَدْ اكْتَفَى مِنْ دُنْيَاهُ بِتِمْرَيْ. He says that your leader is a person who has contented himself with two pieces of, say, shabby clothes. That means simple clothes, not expensive, not luxurious, not, designer, just simple clothes. وَمَنْ تُعْمِهِ بِقُرْسَيْ, and also his food, his sustenance, his meals are 2 loaves, simple 2 loaves of bread. Okay, so this is how your Imam lives. You're supposed to follow this. I know. أَلَا وَإِنَّكُمْ لَا تَقْدِرُونَ عَلَى ذَلِكَ. I know already, if you are aspiring to follow me, you cannot follow this path. This is for the Imam, for the Ma'mun, the follower, there needs to be something else. So the expectation is for you not necessarily to do this. In our pursuits of justice, a person may say, well, I can't get to the nitty gritty of the details. I cannot do that. It's too much for me. It's overwhelming. Fine. What's the bare minimum that we can do? The Imam says, وَلَكِنْ أَعِنُونِي. Rather than support me at least as a follower and I as your Imam by doing these four things. بِوَرَعٍ وَاجْتِهَادٍ وَعِفَّةٍ وَسَدَادٍ. So I'm not asking a lot from you. These are the things that I'm asking. Number one is بِوَرَعٍ. Wara' means just for a person to be, for a person to follow and be intentional in following a certain plan and regimen. It means know the basic boundaries of right and wrong. Whatever they mean to you, whatever you have understood, set those and follow them. This is the instruction of our spiritual teachers, of our ulama, true practitioners of Islam. They're telling us this time and time and time again. There's no secret formula. Just the things that you know is right, do them. The things that you know is wrong, refrain from doing them. بِوَرَعٍ وَاجْتِهَادٍ. The second thing is at least try hard. At least exert yourself, apply yourself. A person says, oh, it's so difficult, this right. At least you can say, I'm trying my best. I may not be able to perform at the level of the Imam or maybe even people around me, but I feel like I'm maximizing my potential. That's ijtihad. وَعِفَّةٍ. I'm saying playing a little defense. Be protective over yourself. Let not external influences come and find a way in your heart, in your family, in your relationships, and for them to be destructive forces. Defend yourselves. Iffa means that, that basic chastity we say. Wasadadin. And be upright in your practices. At least make sure you're oriented to be moving in the right directions. Do these four things. Support me in these four ways. That still qualifies you being in a relationship of Imam and Ma'mun. That still qualifies in a relationship of doing tamassuk to wilayat. Now if a person says, well, there's so many gray issues, I barely know what right and wrong is. That's red flag. Red flag, can't do tamassuk then. That's just an excuse. Or a person says, for whatever reason, I'm not trying my hardest. Now, a person may need help, a person may need support, a person may need to, address some of the things that are holding him or her down, but ultimately the goal is to push yourself to be able to reach those new peaks. We are so much more capable than we give ourselves credit for. So much more capable. Aim high. And if a person aims high and then tries to apply themselves, Allah will open the door. Imam Hadi ﷺ, he says, one motivating factor that'll get you to try hard, truly. He says, اذكر حسرات التفريط تأخذ بتقديم الحزم. So you want the fire to be lit under you? Remember the regrets that you'll have from squandering the opportunities to do good things. That'll get you to be determined and judicious. Quran speaks about the hereafter as the day of regret, the day of sorrow, يوم الحسرة. وأنذرهم يوم الحسرة إذ قضي الأمر وهم في غفلة وهم لا يؤمنون. And warn them of a day of regret when the matter will be decided while they are heedless and they do not believe. So the responses to our I can't, we are not ready, it's not possible, is to respond with these sorts of reminders. If we will look back one day, and that one day maybe Yawmul Hasra and said, oh, that's too bad. Oh, we could have done more. We should have done more. If I'd only applied myself, if only, all of those if statements, now is the time in that pursuit of trying to do tamassuk truly, it's to look at it right now. It's to say, what more can I do? What more can we do? What opportunities have we not capitalized on yet? What potential have I not realized yet? What balance have I not found yet? What service have I not pursued yet? What personal growth have I not yet achieved? This is the person who is aspiring to do tamassuk to wilayat. All of us have potential. But the one who goes into the gym and works hard, grinds day in and day out, watches their diet when they're outside, that person will see results inside. Unless you're God has gifted you the gift of peak physical performance without training. Unless you're that person, we have to work hard. We have to apply ourselves. We have to receive some sort of training. We have to receive some sort of coaching. And then the potentials that we have will be realized. All of us on the Day of Judgment will have some level of regret, because we all know in our heart of hearts, whether the circumstances are in our hands or out of them, we can do better. We can do more. How many of us can say that we're satisfied with our performance? Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam is narrated from him, says, a person who feels confident in their performance, I'm performing optimally, then that person invites the criticisms of the people around him. Why? Because the people that they can see beyond that. Their head is not that big. They're not blinded by their own ego. They're going to say, no, respectfully, brother, sister, maybe you're doing a great job, but there's still room for growth. Or you're doing a terrible job, you can correct yourself. So Imam says, ijtihad, try hard, apply yourselves. Now, this question always comes up of, well, I apply myself and the outcome is not the outcome that I want it to be. Brother, you said apply yourself. I went and I injured myself in the gym. I pushed so hard that, something broke. Inshallah, all of you, Allah give a long life and a healthy life, inshallah. I tried hard. Okay. There's a famous statement that in scholarly literature and religious talks, ulama generally give. It says, Al-abdu yudabbir wallahu yuqaddir. It says the servant yudabbir, plans. Wallahu yuqaddir. Allah is the one who determines. Okay. For us, the first step is to make sure that we have a good tadbir, good tadabbur, good planning at least in place. And then the next step becomes, how do we make sure that we align our plans with the determination of God, with God's plans? Okay. But the first step is what? At least to have strong planning. Good tadbir, good tadabbur. Again, Imam Al-Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam, in trying to help encourage this notion of ijtihad, of trying harder, of applying oneself, of taking the opportunities, of thinking big, of seeing the bigger picture, of thinking long term. He says, Al-maqadiru turiku ma lam yakhtur bibalik. Maqadir, the taqdir, the determinations that God makes, the plans that God makes, the things that God has determined for you. These things, you will be shown something. You will see something that even your mind could not conceive of. Allah will make things happen that you and I could not believe in a million years would happen. But that's, again, it's making sure that there's a little bit of harmony between this tadbir and the taqdir. One of the great scholars of akhlaq, marhum Mushtawi Tehrani, is speaking on this issue, giving a little bit of commentary on this riwayah from Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam. He says that, what can we do to try and align our plans with God's plans? Because he says, tadbir without taqdir is useless. If we're planning and our plans are totally in conflict with the plans of God, obviously we're not going to get very far. So how do we make sure that there's harmony between the two? It says a person does the tadbir, they make their plans, and then they do tawakkul to Allah. He says in simple terms, he says say to Allah, oh Allah, in my limited knowledge, with my limited experience, I was able to make this plan. I came up with this plan. I found this to be the best course of action. But you know better than I. So if you've determined something that is better, then do it. It says if you do this tawakkul after you've done the tadbir, after you've done good planning, then you entrust it in the hands of God, then what will happen? He says that if you had planned something that was supposed to be to your benefit and God decided it was, then it will happen. If Allah decided that that thing that you had planned is actually detrimental to you, was harmful to you, was not in your best interest, Allah will change that and will replace it with something better. Then you'll know that your tadbir, your planning was not necessarily accurate to what was in your best interest. That'll help you not only, and I'm adding this part myself, not only in your future plannings, because you're learning from that, but also ultimately you're not changing the underlying fact that you were entrusting your affairs to God, but only after you've planned correctly and equitably. You have not outsourced that to God. Because that's a person who is not a practitioner of ijtihad. If I can be so bold, that's the dua of a lazy person. Right? That's the lesson that we learn from Bani Israel. You and your Lord go and fight and we'll sit right here. You and Imam, Allah, you all figure out what's the best for everybody in your plans, decide when you're going to come, decide when you're going to fix the world. We're right here, we're waiting for you. Same sort of vibe we get, same sort of energy we get from them. Tadbir wa tawakkul. This ayah from Surah Talaq tells us, وَيَرْزُقْهُ مِنْ حَيْثُ لَا يَحْتَسِبْ. Allah will provide you for you in ways that you could not even imagine, that you did not plan on. وَمَنْ يَتَوَكَّلَ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. A person who entrusts their affairs to God, Allah is sufficient for them. So the basic point is there, in doing our tamassuk, there's a part that we must do, and there's a part that we entrust on Allah. But we have to take that first step to do it, for tamassuk to hold true. This is why the day of Ghadeer has to remain alive. This is why the celebration of Ghadeer has to be prominent. This is why there's so much attention having to be paid to Ghadeer. All the other things are good, they're a part of it. But that core of tamassuk needs to remain vibrant. And I'll end with this point, because I know we're approaching the time of salah. The Imams were intentional in making sure that these facets remained alive. Even in the life of Imam Hadi ﷺ, that many of our scholars say he is one of the forgotten, neglected Imams. Not only was the Imam exiled, he was put under house arrest, was he under surveillance, he was jailed. Despite that, the Imam was so effective in spreading the true teaching of who Ahlul Bayt were. And how does that happen? Two examples of them that have to find a more prominent role, have to feature more so in our activities. One is Ziyarat Jame Kabira. Ziyarat Jame Kabira is the master ziyarah. That companion, Musa ibn Abdullah al-Nakhai, came to the Imam and says, teach me a ziyarah that I can perform for all of the Imams, one that is powerful and efficacious. And he teaches them Ziyarat Jame Kabira. And the second of that, which is probably even less known, is Ziyarat Ghadiriyah. Imam Hadi ﷺ, in his being exiled and being brought to Samirra, made ziyarah of Amir al-Mu'mineen on the day of Ghadeer. And he recited this lengthy ziyarah, which is known as Ziyarat Ghadiriyah, saying over 200 merits and virtues of the Imam is recited, of Imam Ali ﷺ's merit is mentioned in this ziyarah. Over 80 ayahs of the Quran that apply to the Imam are mentioned. Close to 20 hadith from the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, narrated in both Shia and Sunni sources that are prominent in the Islamic tradition are found in this ziyarah. Ziyarat Ghadiriyah. So what is he doing there? He's teaching. He's teaching the community who this Ali alayhi salam is. That many of them, for a short portion, were accustomed only to hearing what? Only to hearing the cursing of his name atop the pulpits. This is who Ali is. Assalamu alayka ayyuha an-naba'u al-azim alladhi hum fihi mukhtalifun wa anhu yusa'alun. Using the ayahs of the Quran to describe who Ali alayhi salam was. Peace be upon you, O the great news, the one whom they differ, the one whom they will be asked about. Assalamu alayka ya Amir al-Mu'mineen amanta billah wa hum mushrikun. You believed while they were still mushrik. وَصَدَّقْتَ بِالْحَقِّ وَهُمْ مُكَذِّبُونَ. And you validated the truth while they were still denying it. While they still said it was lies and concoctions and fabrications. وَجَاهَدْتَ فِي اللَّهِ وَهُمْ مُحْجِمُونَ. You were first in line to strive and struggle in the way of God, while all of them took a back seat and they denied. Ali, this is who you are. To the point the Imam continues, we're short on time, but I just encourage you to read this ziyarah. He says, so much the Imam is speaking about who Imam Ali والسلام, is and how this event of Ghadeer is prominent in doing so. He says, Ya Ali, ashhadu ya Amir al-Mu'mineen, anna shaka fika ma amana bil Rasul al-Amin. He says, the person who has a doubt in you and in your position, in your status, in your divine designation, this person never had iman to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This is what the Imam is outlining. The ziyarat Ghadiriyah. وأن العادل بك غيرك عاند عن الدين القويم الذي ارتضاه لنا رب العالمين وأكمله بولادك يوم الغدير. He says that, and whoever leaves you and chooses another path, chooses another one as their leader, has indeed diverted from the true religion that the Lord of the worlds has chosen for us, and that He completed on the day of Ghadir through declaring that divine commission of your leadership. It's such a rich dua in not just telling the story of Ghadir, but telling the story and essentially having a very beautiful description of who the Imam is by just using predominantly the ayahs of the Quran and the hadith of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. This serves as a timeless artifact, a message for us to hold firm to, for us to better understand and appreciate, and also to better introduce to others. Yet if you ask about Ziyarat Ghadiriyah, what is this thing? What are you talking about? Never heard of it. This is the legacy of Imam Hadi alayhi salatu wasalam. So when some ulama say Imam al-Hadi is neglected Imam, sure, yeah, he was under house arrest, he wasn't very readily accessible, all that, but also he was still putting out these messages. But it requires the listening ear, right? It requires a listening ear for a person to receive. And that's what we're after, inshallah, on this day of Ghadir. Alhamdulillah, alladhi ja'alana min al-mutamassikin bi walayati aliyin amir al-mu'minin. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله حي على السلام حي على السلام حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير الأمل حي على خير الأمل الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله لا إله إلا الله.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم استغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلاة الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ربنا لا تذق قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده
سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. أستغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. بر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
just a reminder that I'm traveling, so inshallah my prayer will be shortened, so you can continue your prayers after the tashahhud. Astaghfirullah Rabbi wa atubu. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah. أشهد أن عليا حجة الله عليه الصلوات الله. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. الله أكبر. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء نحوا. سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى. ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى. سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا. قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى. بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى. إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. ذلك الله ربنا. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. ربي زدني علما وعملا والحقني بالصالحين برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. وصل يا رب على محمد وآله الطاهرين. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله.
سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد.
الله أكبر. الله أكبر.
سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. رب صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدًا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، الله أكبر. لا إله.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Let's recite Dua Imam Zamana all together. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كن لوليك الحجة بن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. پر محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
زيارة المعصومين. السلام عليك يا رسول الله، السلام عليك يا نبي الله، السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين علي بن أبي طالب، السلام عليك يا فاطمة سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسن والحسين سيد شباب أهل الجنة،
وعلى 9 المعصومين من ولد الحسين. السلام عليك يا علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي. السلام عليك يا صاحب العصر والزمان. السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن ويا إمامنا وإمام الإنس والجان. عجل الله تعالى فرجه وسهل الله تعالى مخرجه وظهوره. السلام عليكم يا سادتي يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.